Life is hardest on the... Raise your hand.
Mars.
Mars? Okay, no.
Jupiter.
Venus? No. No.
Uranus.
No. No.
Saturn.
No.
Earth.
No.
No, this one. The sun.
No.
Space station. A black hole.
No. Life is hardest on the rich people.
Oh, okay.
Y'all think, oh, see what it is, they save all their money and they gain all their wealth, and then the sun becomes what? A red giant and consumes the earth. And all of your wealth just gets burned up. So it's hard on the wealthy people. The poor people don't have anything to lose. Life is hardest on those who have the most to lose. I know you don't understand this, but as an adult, you're supposed to have like a perception of the future. Like when you're a kid, we say that your brain isn't fully developed. By the time you're 25, you begin to see that your future actions, have consequences. And when you're young, you don't really think that way. But as an adult, you begin to think that way. So adults get concerned about their wealth when they're like 65, 70 years old. Like, now what am I going to do with all this wealth that I have? I'm gonna give it all to charity, like Bill Gates says. Well, a lot of them don't think like that. A lot of them are like, well, I'm going to Mars. We're going to establish a colony there. And yesterday we talked about what's the percent chance that males have of getting cancer on Earth?
60.
No, we have about a 40%. Men have about a 40% chance of getting cancer. And women have what chance of getting cancer? In your lifetime, you have a 40% chance as a male to get cancer.
33.
Women are around 37 to 38%. So they have a little bit less of a chance. I know we all shout out for the breast cancer month. Everybody knows about that. But men have higher chances of cancer rates. Maybe it's because of where they work and things like that.
Is there such thing as testicular cancer?
Yes. All right. Now, if you were to go and live, Brandon, if you were to go to live on Mars, right? You're going to live on Mars, Brandon. We're going to send you to Mars. Okay? Now, do you expect your cancer rates to be higher there or lower?
Lower.
They're going to be higher there because on Mars, the atmosphere is not the same. So the cosmic rays, which are what formed boron, cosmic rays, page, cosmic rays that formed boron. If you remember the sheet yesterday, we talked about the various methods that the elements form. Supernova would be what? Most important element on the periodic table? Gold. Yeah. We're here today in chemistry because of gold, because of Henning Blatt. He was trying to discover gold where?
California.
In his pee. Remember his pee was gold? Yeah, he was trying to get gold out of his pee. All right.
Did he make phosphorus?
Phosphorus. Yeah, you discovered phosphorus. Very good, Elijah. So be aware that if we were to live on Mars, the cosmic rays, which forms boron, would damage your DNA. You'd have a higher chance of cancer and thus death. So that's the biggest problem in space travel would be the cosmic rays. They never talk about that in like Star Wars and Star Trek. We got to defend ourselves from the cosmic rays. They never mentioned that, but you would be in big trouble because of the cosmic rays. Once again, life is hardest on the rich people because when the sun becomes a red giant, if you've been generation after generation passing on your wealth to the previous or to the new generation, that's typically how it works. Like Trump inherited quite a bit of wealth from his family, and he intends to pass that along to his children. Now, if you don't have any children, you tend to think philanthropy, that is to give to other people in need, but that doesn't always work that way. Sometimes it just gets caught up in the government's hand. That's another story in itself. If you do pass your wealth on to your children and you keep doing that, which most people tend to do, it is going to be hardest on the rich people. That is because the sun, when it does engulf the earth, there'll be no evidence we were ever here. That's hard because you're like, look, I got all this money from my previous generations and I'm, struggling with losing it. Now the poor people, they're just trying to get like a bologna sandwich with cheese on it. So there's a it's not going to be hard on them. They're not going to be like, gee, I'm sad that we're going to lose this earth to the sun engulfing it. The poor people don't think like that. So it's all about perspective. You have to have, see, as a kid, your brain isn't fully developed because you don't have that, what am I doing in 5 years mentality. When you become an adult, you think, gee, I don't want to live with my parents anymore, so I better work a little bit hard because 5 years from now I don't want to be living with them. Now you'll understand the older your parents get, the more controlling they will become. If you think they're controlling now, just give it 5 years. Protons are repelling each other because of the positive charge. Most people understand that positives repel. If you try to push neutrons together, they will not form another product. A neutron plus a neutron is not going to produce something. So that's going to be a repulsion. Is the repulsion greater than the proton? Probably not. It's just the strength is going to be less, but it's still going to be a repulsion. If you could put a plus sign there and they form something new, then that would be an attraction. So these repel. Usually like things repel. Everybody remember that? Likes repel, dislikes attract. That's why, my wife and I were attracted to each other because she's not exactly like my mama. Balance it out. So, what are the neutrons responsible for? The strong force. So in the atom, there's a strong force happening between the protons and the neutrons. And what causes the strong force? Anybody know? They're called quarks. Raise your hand if you've heard of quark. Is associated with the nuclear force. The nuclear force acts between hadrons, known as mesons, and baryons. This residual strong force acting indirectly transmits gluons that form part of the virtual pi and pion mesons, which in turn transmit the strong force between nucleons that holds the nucleus together. So in summary, this is the diagram right here. You have a proton, and then you have a quark right here, specifically the pion, that's working with the neutron. So the pion is the particle associated with the strong force. It has a mass, and it's designated to help keep these two together. It's a quark, as we just read up here. Now, we used to think that gravity held the nucleus together, but that's not the case. We did not find the graviton in the nucleus. So if you go into physics now, they don't call it a force of gravity, they call it an acceleration. Why do they not call it a force of gravity? Because the pion has a mass. It is a particle. So we have not found the graviton which is associated with gravity. Nobody has found it yet. Nobody even knows it exists. So if you don't have a particle that has a mass, you can't have a force, because force equals mass times acceleration. So the electric force is associated with the electrons being attracted to the protons around the nucleus. That's called the electric force. The electrons attracted to the protons, electric force. Electrons have a mass, so that force can be measured. Mass times acceleration. The only way to increase gravity is to increase the mass. So our sun has a larger gravity than the Earth. The moon has less gravity than the Earth. Everybody clear? So the thinking was that the gravitons had to be in the nucleus, because what's in the nucleus? The most mass, right? That's where the mass is. The protons and the neutrons make up the mass of the atom, right? Electrons, very little mass surrounding it. So the thinking was, oh, the graviton must be in the nucleus. Well, they've searched and they haven't found it there, so it's not there. The electrons are not there. They're around the nucleus. So most likely the gravitons are going to be surrounding the electrons. in maybe a symbiotic relationship. There's a lot of symbiotic relationships in nature. You get like, birds that'll fly on animals and pick off insects, things like that. So symbiosis happens in nature, so we're probably going to see it with the graviton. We haven't found it yet, so that's the goal, is to find it. You find the graviton, you're going to get the Nobel Prize. I will nominate you for it, Sydney. I'll nominate you for it in like physics. Because if you do that, you will validate Newton's laws. So Newton's laws have kind of moved away from gravity being a force and just being an acceleration. Because of Einstein, we haven't found the particle yet. So if you find the particle, then I'm going to be like, Nobel Prize for you, Sydney.
Continues until negligible amounts of strontium-90 remain.